Good afternoon. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be shared via email to all registrants following the event. We have live audio captioning enabled. Please click on the live transcript feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to view or hide these captions throughout today's discussion. We will reserve time at the end for our panel to address questions submitted via the Q&A feature found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. I will address the panel with the questions we receive. My name is Perry Moriarty. I am an associate professor at the University of Minnesota Law School. I teach criminal law, juvenile justice, and am currently teaching a Grand Challenges course on college and prison. And I am the co-director of our law school's clinical program. Our clinical program has a number of clinics, and I teach one of them. It's a child advocacy and juvenile justice clinic where, among other things, we represent individuals charged with crimes as juveniles and those who are serving long prison sentences for offenses that took place when they were juveniles. Or in the case of our interviewee today, alleged offenses that took place. I am going to introduce our panelists and then turn to some questions. Matt DiTullio is a 2020 graduate of the law school. He is from Wisconsin, and he was a student in my clinic, the Child Advocacy Clinic, which I should mention I co-teach with Professor Gene Sanderson during his second and third years of law school. Caitlin Falk is also from Wisconsin and is currently a second year in the Child Advocacy Clinic. This is her first year in the clinic. And Maayan Burrell. For the last 6 months, Matt, Caitlin, and I have had the honor of representing Maayan. Maayan is a son, a brother, a father, a husband, a friend, a community member, and so much more. Maayan also spent 18 years in prison in Minnesota for a crime he did not commit. We are here today to talk about Maayan's fight for justice over the last 18 years, his repeated declarations of innocence, his family and his community's tireless efforts over years and years to free him, the series of events that ultimately led to his release from prison on December 15th, 2020, Maayan's experience over the last 2 months since leaving prison, and Maayan's hopes, dreams, and aspirations for the future. Matt and Caitlin will also share what it has meant to them, what it has taught them as law students, and in Matt's case, as a young lawyer, to represent Maayan and to represent others who were sentenced to spend their lives in prison as children. Before we hear from Maayan, Matt, and Caitlin, I want to give a brief overview of Maayan's case. On November 22nd, 2002, 11-year-old Tyisha Edwards was killed by a stray bullet as she sat at her dining room table in South Minneapolis. The bullet that killed Tyisha was reportedly one of 8 intended for a 17-year-old named Timothy Oliver, who was standing in front of a nearby home. And I want to say at the outset, and I know this is very important to Maayan, that nothing about what we are talking about today should in any way minimize the loss of Tyisha. That is something that has been front and center for Maayan throughout his fight for justice and remains front and center. The life of a incredibly vibrant young girl was lost, and that remains to this day a tragedy for her family and her community. Within days of Tyisha's death, 21-year-old Isaiah Tyson, 23-year-old Hans Williams, and Maayan, who was just 16 at the time, were arrested and charged with Tyisha's death and the attempted shooting of Timothy Oliver. From the moment he was arrested and through his mother's tragic death just 3 weeks after his arrest, through 2 trials and appeals, and through 18 years in prison, Mayan steadfastly maintained his innocence. At the same time, his family, his siblings, his father, his stepmother, his wife, his son, his community worked relentlessly to free him. They visited Mayan as often as they possibly could. Every week, in most cases, they hired lawyers, they held rallies. They never let Mayan's name or his story fade away. In early 2020, Mayan's case gained national attention after an Associated Press investigation into his conviction raised multiple questions about its integrity. In July, a panel of national legal experts was convened to conduct an independent review, and its 6 members were some of this country's leading experts on criminal sentencing, conviction integrity, and clemency. They had more than 150 years of combined experience as both defense attorneys and prosecutors. And I'll say a bit more about their findings in just a moment. Matt, Caitlin, and I began to work with Mayan in August of 2020. So really just 6 months ago. Mayan's lawyer, Dan Guerrero of Meshbesher and Spence, was already preparing to bring Mayan's innocence claims to court. But Mayan was also pursuing another avenue of relief. In November 2019, Mayan had filed a petition with the Minnesota Board of Pardons, seeking a pardon on the grounds of innocence, and a hearing before the board was set for December 15th, 2020. And that petition is something that Mayan, with the assistance of family members, put together himself. Mayan engaged the Child Advocacy Clinic in August to represent him before the board. As part of our work, we amended Mayan's petition to include a request for commutation of his sentence on 4 added grounds, in addition to his innocence: the excessiveness of his sentences, which were a minimum of 41 years and a maximum of life; his institutional adjustment. As we made clear in Mayan's pardon hearing, Mayan had virtually no disciplinary incidents at all during his 18 years, despite his innocence, and engaged in numerous programs. In fact, had a really stellar institutional record. His reversion to his Islamic faith, which today remains very important to him, and his plan of reentry, which was also robust. On December 8th, a week before the Pardon Board's hearing, the independent panel issued its report, and I'll highlight 2 of its findings. First, it raised, quote, significant questions regarding whether Burrell was involved in the shooting death of Tyisha Edwards. It raised significant concerns about the investigation and the integrity of Mayan's convictions. The panel also concluded that no purpose is served by Burrell's continuing incarceration and no negative fact overwhelms the imperative of freedom. On December 15th, 2020, the Minnesota Board of Pardons agreed, commuted Mayan's sentence to 20 years, and Mayan was released by the Department of Corrections that night. I know you are eager to hear from Mayan, Matt, and Caitlin, and to have me stop talking, and you will. I do want to let you know, however, that Mayan is not going to talk about the details of his underlying conviction today, because his fight for exoneration continues. He has cases that may go to court and before other administrative bodies, and it is important that Mayan not then comment on the integrity of his conviction at this point, which is a very hard thing for someone who has declared their innocence for 18 years. There is a lot more to Mayan's story than you will hear today, and there is a lot more that Mayan would like to say, but we're going to have to wait to do that until the time is right. Mayan also has wanted to, and you will hear today, thank the people who have supported him for the last 18 years. And that is something that he would have done a lot more vociferously as soon as he was released, were he not cautioned by us not to speak out. But today will be one of his first opportunities to do that. So I thank you for your patience as to the topics that we've asked Mayan not to discuss. So to the questions, and the first one is for Maayan. Maayan, you were arrested on November 26th, 2002 at the age of 16. And here are some photos of you at both 15 and 16. This is who you were at the time. You were held in the Hennepin County Jail for more than 5 months before you even went to trial. You had a 1-year-old son at the time you were arrested. You hadn't even been tried or convicted when you were first put in jail. Can you talk about this experience?
Yes. Yes, I could talk about the experience. To be completely honest, the first 5 months of my incarceration was the hardest, especially because I've never actually been through anything remotely close to this experience. I've never been incarcerated. I've never been stuck in a cell. I've never been in a situation where I couldn't reach out to the people that I love, or the people that I love couldn't reach out to me. And so in the first maybe 3 or 4 months of my incarceration, I was sent, like, I never went through a certification process or anything. I was sent straight to Hennepin County Jail, and I was placed in a segregation unit where I was locked down 23 hours a day. And so that in itself is like, it was a real shock. It was a real traumatic experience. It was very painful, and it was a very confusing time for me, because I didn't understand how you could be penalized and punished like that for something that you had nothing to do with. It was a very, very, very hard time for me. Psychologically, it was like kind of like just mentally being beat down. But yeah, that was, like I said, like, that was probably the hardest time of my incarceration. Besides the last, probably that time in the last year of my incarceration was the hardest time.
Could you say a little bit about what the typical day was like when you first entered prison? What type of access did you have to education? What access did you have to your family and to the outside world?
So are you speaking about prison, or are you speaking about the county jail?
In jail.
Okay, so the county jail, it was nothing. So I was just being housed. I was put in a corner in a cell, locked down 23 hours a day, and I might be able to get out and get on the telephone if I was allowed. Like, say for instance, you get an hour out, but you don't choose the hour that you get out. So the staff might come over the intercom in the morning and say, "Hey, Burrell, do you want to take your hour out, or do you want to pass on this?" And so, this being new to me, a lot of times I would try to ask or say, "Oh, well, can I come out later on? My family's at work," or like, "I can't get a hold of anybody this early in the morning." And so, later on to come, and I'll try to say, can I come out for my hour? And say, "No, will you pass on your hour because you didn't come out at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning?" So then when I was able to come out, I basically came out of my cell, and I maybe be able to get a phone call or a shower, or in a shower. But besides that, there was no education at all. Like, there wasn't any program, and there wasn't anything. Sometimes, there wasn't no recreation. Recreation was getting out and pacing the unit, like walking in circles around a pod. But for the beginning, the whole entire probably to the last month of me being in segregation, I never went to any recreation. I guess they said that they did come and take people to rec in a different unit or in a different jail, but I never had that access probably until the last month or two of me being in there.
During the same period, and I hope it's okay that I ask about this, during the first month of your time in Hennepin County Jail, you lost your mom. Can you say a bit about that?
Yeah. So, like I said, the hardest time of my incarceration was that first, those months of being in the county jail. And So I wasn't so
And we can
for
come back to this too.
no, it's no problem. I mean, I can answer the question. So I'm trying to explain it to the best of my ability, but like it's so like if you could imagine having a child, a 16-year-old child, and then me being put in that position or put in that situation, and you not have any power or any control to be able to come and help. And in reverse, like for you to be a child, to be in a situation where you have a mother or you have parents, but specifically like you have a mother, and that you reach out and you say, "Mom, I'm not supposed to be here," and she know that you're not supposed to be there, and her not be able to do anything to help. But this is the only comfort that you have in being in a situation is knowing that you have a parent or you have parents to protect you, or maybe like when somebody's doing you wrong, that you could go back and say, "Mom, this isn't right. Like they're not treating me right in here," or like, I don't understand this. Like, will you explain it to me? It's almost like, a parent is a safety net, and so my safety net was taken from me. Like my mother, she ended up coming to visit me in the county jail. Like she actually, we actually lived in Bemidji, Minnesota at the time. Like we didn't even live in the city. So she was having to travel back and forth from Minneapolis to Bemidji to even come and visit me. And she ended up driving from coming to visit me, and she ended up dying in a car accident. And for me to be where I was at, and for me to know that she was coming from visiting me or coming down to visit me, it was like it was a heavy burden to carry. And then, as well as like maybe even blame myself. But the reality of it is that like I wasn't supposed to be there at all. But still, like, that she wouldn't be coming if you weren't in that situation or if you weren't in that place. And then on the flip side, like losing that safety net, not having anyone to actually to protect you. There was no protection anymore. It was just like everything was kind of like, you could, like I told before, like, it's like, okay, it's life's not worth living. But not just that, like we could have our way with them. And it's not anyone here to argue about it or put up too much fuss and fight.
We'll come back to a little bit of that period, but thank you. I'm going to turn to Matt briefly. And Matt, you joined the clinic as a second year in the fall of 2018, and you were immediately assigned to represent another individual who, at the age of 16, was sentenced to prison for life. And in this person's case, consecutive life without parole sentences. So really consecutive death in prison sentences. And you began to work with Maayan this year. What have you learned? You're a young lawyer now, but what have you learned, as someone coming up in this profession, as a student, as a human being, working with Maayan and our other client?
So first of all, I want to draw out a similarity between the two cases, but also distinguish the two a little bit. In Maayan's case, he was literally not present at the scene of the crime. So innocence was obviously a major component, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that innocence is also a major component of this other case that Professor Moriarty is referencing. That said, in both of these instances, Maayan and the other client, these were children and juveniles when they were first incarcerated, when they were first charged with their crimes. And so from a young age, they were captured within a system that just worked against them in every conceivable I came into these situations assuming that there was a certain amount of distrust, whether that actually existed or not. I assumed that these clients likely had distrust for the system. So for me, the first step was about gaining the trust of Maayan, gaining the trust of this other client, and building a relationship with those individuals. And I do think I have been able to do that. And so that's where it starts. And then the other piece that's worth pointing out is, I'm 30 years old, so I'm a little bit younger than Maayan. I'm the same age as the other client. So it's very easy for me to look back at 16 or 17 years old, who I was, where I was, how much time has passed since then and how much has changed since then, and recognize truly that amount of time and that period of life. And that's just a fraction of the sentence that both of these individuals were up against. And, people, the general population gets so caught up in these notions of guilt or innocence. And even though innocence is a major factor in both of these cases, I think people forget that justice impacted people like Maayan, like this other client. First and foremost, they're people. They have families, some have children, they have communities, they have goals and aspirations. They love people, they're loved by people. And in America, we tend to be so blinded by retribution that we forget about the human element of all of this. And it allows us to really treat fellow humans as animals, rather than consider the contributions that everyone can make to society. And so it's just a really harmful process from my point of view. And I learned a lot about that from really building that relationship with Maayan and this other client.
Thank you, Matt. Maayan, you were convicted for the first time in April 2003 by a jury of the offenses of homicide or murder and attempted murder. And you were sentenced to life in prison with eligibility for release after 30 years, plus another 15 years, plus another 12-month enhancement. And this was just after your 17th birthday. How did you process a prison sentence of 40 plus years to life at that point?
To be completely honest, I don't think that there was any processing. It's hard for you to process time when you haven't had time. It's hard for you to process life if you haven't lived life. And at 17 years old, you can't tell somebody about 40 years into their future, or you can't even expect for somebody to understand what 40 years means. And for me personally, because I am innocent and I was innocent at that time, I never believed that I would be in prison for more than 6 months, or I didn't intend on being there doing life. So even with the numbers, it was more of a devastating. And then with the loss of my mom and everything that was happening, I was more so confused than anything, because I didn't believe, even though it happened, I still somewhat believed in the judicial system or the judicial process, and believing that, okay, you can't be sent to prison for a crime that you didn't commit. And here it was that I was being sent to prison for the rest of my life, or the rest of my natural life, for something I had nothing to do with. And so the only thing that I really had was the fact that I'm innocent, and the faith that, one day everything in the dark has to come to the light. So it was kind of is this a mistake? What's going on? And then people tell, okay, well, you just filed for appeal. So, everything's going to come out on your appeal, on your direct appeal. So, that's going to take 6 months, a year tops, you'll be home. and really believing that, like, okay, well, once the truth comes out, once the fact that, like, okay, you're innocent, like, once that comes out, that you'll be released. So, as far as processing that time, like, I don't think that I really ever, like, the beginning, like, when I was first into prison, like, I honestly, like, I believed that any day I'd be going home. And so I had to live that way. Like, and so it was a blessing because I had faith, but then at the same time, it was a hardship and it was a painful, traumatic experience because every day I was in there, I never tasted freedom. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to be going home. Everything, the truth's going to come out, it's going to come out soon. And so I'll be home soon, but then, like, soon never came. Well,
and then in
I don't know if that really makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does, especially because in 2005, your first conviction was reversed by the Court of Appeals, and you were told you were going to go back and have another trial. So, to some extent, everything that you thought was going to happen started to happen. And then you were returned to Hennepin County Jail, this time, not just for 5 months, but for 3 years. And I've heard that no one has spent more time awaiting trial in Hennepin County Jail than you did at that time. And then you had a second trial in front of a judge. Can you talk a bit about that experience and why did you decide the second time around to have a bench trial?
So do you want me to speak about the process of my conviction being overturned, or just the process of or like what made me decide to take a bench trial?
Well, what about the whole experience of being told, okay, this first conviction is wiped away and you have another chance here, and you waited for 3 years in the Hennepin County Jail again for that chance? And what was that experience like?
So, yeah, so I was 16. All right, so I was 17 years old when I got sent to prison, and I was 19 when my conviction got overturned. So, like, in my mind and my heart, it was kind of like, oh, prayers have finally been answered. Because that was a long time, like 2 years, like that was a long, long time for me. And so much had transpired in my life in between that time. Like, I lost a lot of people that were close to me. I ended up, like, a lot of relationships, a lot of friendships, a lot of, stuff deteriorated. Like, it was no longer like a lot of friends. Like, I didn't have, a lot of friends that I was very close with before I went in that place. And so a lot of stuff had transpired. And so when my conviction got overturned, it was like liberation. It was like, okay, finally, my prayers have been answered, so I'm gonna go home. And I didn't know that, like, so I was oblivious, like, I was very ignorant to even that process of appeals. I thought that when if the state does something wrong, or if it's something that's found wrong on the state's behalf, then that's what it is. But instead of, like, me going home, like, my conviction was overturned, it was reversed or amended to the lower courts. So I went down to Hennepin County Jail. And so then it was like, all right, now I'm down here, everything in the dark is going to come to the light. Now I'm just waiting on the process to take place. So it's like, okay, well, now it's really like every day, any day I could go home. Like, people walk in, the deputies walk in every day with pink slips to release people. And a lot of times it's just like people that weren't supposed to be down there anyway. So it might have been somebody that was just locked up over the weekend and it was the wrong person, or somebody who's whatever it is. If people are being released every day, you're watching people go home every day. And here it is with me, like, I'm innocent. I'm sitting down there. So every day when they come in with these slips, I will watch them come in there with those slips, releasing people, and I think it's going to be me. So every day I thought I was going to go home while I was sitting there in that county jail. And it was like torture. You know what I mean? Because it's not like 3 years. Like, 3 years, I didn't see the sun at all. Like, I didn't go outside for 3 years. Like, I very rarely left a unit, you know what I mean? Unless I was going to court, like, a little pod, like, where I was sometimes for a whole year straight, like, I was just sitting in one place. Like I said, no natural sunlight, you know what I'm saying? Like, nothing. And so that was a very, very traumatic experience for me personally. And then, like you said, like even sitting down there and seeing like people don't sit in Hennepin County Jail like that long. Like people don't, it doesn't happen. And I believe that I did set a record for the longest stint in Hennepin County Jail. So leading up to, as far as my choice, my decision to take a bench trial is that so on my first trial, my initial trial, there was flaws. There was flaws in the trial, and they were spoke on. Like it was the issues that were brought up, they were spoke on. Yeah, and I still was convicted by a jury. And like as far as the judge, he refused to acknowledge the stuff that was being the issues that were being brought up. My Miranda rights being one of them, and that's when my conviction was overturned by a Miranda violation.
In the second trial, you had a bench trial, and that didn't come out in your favor.
Not at all.
And I won't go into that just because that's one of the areas, the specifics of it are one of the areas that we don't want to go into now. But you then spent, that was 2008. I mean, you then spent 12 more years in prison after that. I mean, what sustained you through that period? What sustained you through the subsequent 12 years? I mean, what has sustained you? And I think everyone can see you and hear from you. And, obviously I know you and perhaps some would say I'm biased, but you're remarkable. And your grace and your self-possession and your thoughtfulness and your kindness. I mean, what sustained you through that period?
The biggest thing that sustained me is the Creator Himself. Like if it wasn't for God, like if it wasn't for my religion, if it wasn't for my Creator, like I like none of this would have been possible. So I think that I gained so much, even through the hardships of my initial 2 years or 3 years of being incarcerated, being able to learn who I am as a human being, being able to find myself, and then going down there for that time. I think it was more so just holding on to what I had gained. So those last 12 years was just me holding on to the positivity and even the ability to process things correctly, because like a lot of times people just react off impulse, or they just judge a book by its cover. They just, everything is the surface, whatever's on the surface. And with me, I was kind of forced to dig into everything because of the surface of everything that was in my life was like bad, and like it was completely negative. And I knew that like life couldn't be completely negative. It had to be some type of positivity in my life. And so that was my desire, and that was my drive, was to seek the positivity, or what knowledge it was, or what beneficial knowledge it was for me to gain through my experience. And so and then like with my religion, with Islam, is that like the Creator never placed a burden on you greater than you have the strength to bear. And so and then like just understanding that sometimes we dislike things that are good for us and we love things that are bad for us. And so like even the notion of sometimes like we think that just because something makes us feel good that it's good, or sometimes something makes us feel bad that it's bad. And it's like, that's not necessarily the truth all the time. So with me, it's like I was in a very painful, situation, but it was like, okay, do you look at this as a negative situation, or do you look at this as something that you can gain, or you're being blessed with the strength to overcome these obstacles? And it's like, you're giving this for a reason. So is it that you're going through it so that you can prevent somebody else from going through it later on? Or if somebody is going through it, for you to be able to help them to where they know that they're not going through it alone or by themselves. So that was the main thing. So holding on to what I've learned, and then knowing that it was an obligate, like so even if I might have felt like, giving up myself, like I couldn't give up on the people, like I couldn't give up on the rest of the people. Cause it's like, like going back to the beginning, it's like you thinking about somebody's child that's going through that. And I could only imagine what a parent be like. You know, I mean, I could only imagine what a sibling, or like I can only imagine how it feels to sit back and watch somebody that you care about go through that type of experience and not be able to do anything for them, and even more, not be able to say, listen, I understand. You know, and so with me, it's like, okay, if nothing else, I gained to understand. Okay, like I know, like I understand. You know, even if I can't really I can't come and help right now. Like we gonna walk, we gonna go through it, we gonna figure it out, because I understand. Like I know what you're going through, and so that was the main thing that got me through the last 12 years.
And I'm gonna turn to Caitlin, but to sort of pivot from what we just heard from Maayan. I mean, you've heard him talk about the strength that he summoned, his faith. 18 years in prison for a crime that he didn't commit. You became a student in the clinic in August 2020, and Maayan was your first client. It's the first client you've had, and you met him within weeks. You and I were able to, because the case count in Stillwater was low enough at that point, we were able to go visit Maayan with all the COVID precautions in place in person. Can you talk about your experience meeting Maayan, getting to know him, and representing him?
Yeah, so getting the opportunity to work with Maayan has been such an honor and a privilege. Like a lot of the clients that we have the opportunity to work with in clinic, Maayan has been so kind and he's really humble. I'm continuously amazed by how resilient he has been, given everything he's been through. I mean, he was wrongfully convicted for something that he didn't do at such a young age. He lost his mom a couple of weeks after being sent to jail. He spent the past 18 years in prison, and despite all of this, he continues to carry himself with such poise and such grace, and I don't understand how he manages to do that. I think in all of the conversations that I've had with Maayan, he's continuously expressed, I don't really know why this has happened to me, but I have to believe that something good is going to come out of it, something beyond myself and a bigger purpose. And just having the opportunity to meet with all of Maayan's family members and friends, I've continuously heard about how much Maayan cares for other people as opposed to himself. Matt and I had the opportunity to meet with Maayan's father and stepmother. And I remember that they were telling us a story about how they wanted to drive down to St. Cloud and go visit Maayan during the winter time. But Maayan had told them not to come because there was a snowstorm and the roads were so bad. And I think we all know how precious family time is. And for Maayan to say, hey, your safety is more important than me being able to spend an hour with you really shows who he is as a person. I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to get to learn more about him and get to know him as a person.
Maayan, you were released from prison on December 15th, 2020. And as I said earlier, circumstances were such that that transition and release happened really quickly. And it's not because, the department wasn't accommodating, they were, but we felt it was important, particularly because your case isn't over yet, that you go home and that you not say a lot. And I know that's been hard, particularly because it's prevented you from expressing gratitude and really, really declaring what it is that you've been waiting to say for so long. Can you talk about the experience of being released and add anything that you want to now that you wish you could have said then?
Yeah. So there are so many things that I can't really speak about right now. But as far as the emotion is that the emotion is real, and 18 years is a long time to be somewhere that you're not supposed to be, right? But the feeling that I had walking up out of that place and seeing all of my people out there support me, and even the people that weren't able to show up, I really wanted to allow everybody to know how much I appreciate them. We're no longer separated. Like my situation brought so many people together, and we're family now. And so it almost felt like I was I was forced to be like I had to be silent and not be able to tell my family how much I appreciate them for being there. Um, and that's and like when you ask like what got me through that time, it's like that was one of the biggest things. I mean, besides the creator himself, and you know what I mean? And it's even through the creator himself that he sent all of these amazing people into my life, you know what I mean, and brought them all together to support. And I could never thank him enough, you know, and that's one of the biggest things, like that and just knowing the people that I left in that place, you know what I mean? Like it's some very good brothers up in that place. That I love that become family as well, that were some of my biggest supporters as well. They knew I wasn't supposed to be there all that time, you know, and they spoke as much as they could, like, you know, they were my voice as well. But to all of the people who spoke, like all of the people who marched, all of the people who rallied, all of the people, like I really, that was the biggest thing. Like I wanted to be able to tell them how much I appreciate them, you know, and how much that stuff meant to me. You know, I remember sitting in that cell and turning on the television and seeing people marching and, you know, saying free Mayan, free Mayan, free Mayan. And it's just like to be in such a dark place, but to have so much light. It's like they gave me that light, you know what I'm saying? They allowed me to be illuminated in a dark place. And for that, like, I'll forever be grateful. And like, I wanted, like, if I could, like, I would reach out to every single person, like individually, and tell them that I appreciate them. You know what I mean? Like I would let them know how much that meant to me. You know what I'm saying? How much joy it brought to my heart. You know what I'm saying? When I was brokenhearted. And it's not over. Like I'm like, the fight's not over. You know what I mean? And so, I wholeheartedly believe that nothing in this life happens without reason. And I became basically, you know what I'm saying, the face for, you know, the injustice, or, you know what I mean? Like, as far as like me being incarcerated, for something I didn't have anything to do with, from me being a child and all of this different, like, and so now the same way that, you know, they showed up and showed out, like, you know, that's it. You know, the fight's not over, but I want to know how much I appreciate them, you know, because they were my strength. You know what I mean? When I felt weak, you know what I mean? Like, when I had so many people, and I'm talking about different states and different countries. Like, I appreciate all of it, you know, and that's the biggest thing, that if I could, because it just broke my heart, like, to walk out of that place and then you know, them to be right there. A lot of people were there, and if I wanted to walk, you know, but it's like I couldn't, and I felt so restricted. I felt.
I know you didn't know that many people were going to be there.
Had no idea.
Yeah.
Had no idea. I thought it was a couple of people. I had no idea.
No. And I'm sorry about the restrictions, and I really hope sooner than later they won't be there.
God willing, real soon.
You've been home for 2 months now, and, you know, I'm going to ask you what this has been like, but there's one person that we haven't talked about yet, and someone I know is incredibly important to you. I mean, you've got your siblings. I know that your wife is really important to you, and your siblings are. You have a son who was born before you went in. He was 1 year old, and he was 1 year old, and he was in the first set of pictures of you at 15. And you've been home for 2 months. You've been able to, you know, be a father on the outside. Can you talk about what it's been like to be home?
Yeah. Not just to him, but to my other children.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But like, yeah, for sure. Right. But like,
he was there before you went in. Yeah.
So yeah. And that's the thing is this. So with him is that he was another part of that strength. You know what I mean? And he was another part of that transformation, because I knew that I had to be something. Like, I always wanted to be something. I always wanted to be the father that would make his child proud, you know what I mean? Or that he could look up to, and that he could be led down the right path, you know what I'm saying, instead of the wrong. And I've seen it happen so many times, where even incarceration in itself is that people idolize their parents, but then their parents is going through a struggle like that. And it's like, so now that becomes a part of what you idolize. And so I always wanted them to know, you know what I'm saying, like, that wasn't like, I wasn't supposed to be there. And if I could be anywhere, like, if it was anything that I would be there with him. And so now and then, like I said, like even going through that, like a lot of choices and decisions that were made while I was in that place, I always thought back to my son. Like I always thought to him, you know what I'm saying? It was like, okay, well, you know how like, it's like, okay, well, would you feel comfortable with doing this in front of your parents? Would you feel comfortable with doing this in front of your children? Like, what would you feel comfortable with doing this in front of your creator? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that was one of the things. It's like, okay, like, and then not just that, it's like, you know what I'm saying, would you feel comfortable with him doing this? You know what I mean? Or following, you know what I mean? And so it's like, it's been a beautiful feeling to be able to embrace him, to be able to hold him, to be able to spend time with him, unrestricted time, like, because that place basically, it kills the intimacy in any relationship. You have to sit across from your child. Like once they get to a certain age, you can't hold them no more. And so even though like he's not a child and like he's an adult now, he's actually older than I was when I went to prison. He'd be 20 years old this year, but he's still my baby. You know what I mean? And so like to be able to hold him and not have anyone tell me that, you know what I'm saying, I have to let him go after 5 seconds. Like that's priceless, and it's something I prayed for so long. And I mean, like I said, like it's a prayer. Everything I've been experiencing is like just prayers being answered.
I don't know if you can see it, but we have a slide up of some pictures of you really since you've been released. And there are a lot of your family members are there. There's also a picture of you and with another one of your children and your wife, and you're sledding. And there's a picture of you with a telescope. I think that was the first night of your release. There's a picture of you, I think pretty recently at a Catholic Charities event. Can you talk about some of the things that you've been able to do since being out that, some of us may take for granted that have really meant a lot to you?
Yeah. So everything means a lot to me every day, right? Deprivation really makes you appreciate what you have when you have it, So when I was in that place, like it's so many different, and I went through so many different stages in life where it's like, I just wish I could go to high school. Like I wish I could I remember being in prison, like, man, I wish I could graduate high school, or seeing people walk across the stage. Like, I wish I could go, or going to college. Like, I wish I could, you know what I mean? And then it's like, now your children are growing up. It's like, oh man, I wish I was just able to, your daughter like, oh, I'm going sled. Dad, I want to go sled. It's like, I wish I was there to take you sledding. Like, inshallah, I'll be home to take you sledding soon. All the different things that you pray for, all the things that you desire. And then you get out here and a lot of people forget that stuff. But to me, it's like, no, like I know where I came from. I know where I was just at. And it's like, no, every opportunity I have to do something, I'm going to do it, because I was just existing for so long. So now it's like, even if it might seem like it's something small, it's living life. And that's what I'm trying to do, live life every day. So as far as those experiences, like every one of them are priceless, to be so. All right. So the crazy, and it's not, so the first week I came home, it was like, you always pray like, man, I just can't wait to go and get in a real bed and go to sleep, or like, I can't wait to not have and so the first week of me being home is like, I was so comfortable and I felt so peaceful, but I couldn't sleep. And it didn't have anything to do with like where I was at. It was the fact that like I had dreams about being in these places, in this specific place, like for so long. It was like, it's almost like it's a dream come true. And it's so many times that I woke up from them dreams and I was in prison and I seen concrete and steel and bars, and a CO at my door, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I was afraid to go to sleep because I didn't want to wake up and be back in that place. Like I was afraid. Like I didn't want to wake up and be back in prison. It was like, man, I can't allow this dream to end. But then the realization, like reality was like, okay, you're home. So you have to get up, like you have to shake it. And you just have to continue to let them dreams come true. Allow yourself to live. And so, even like being at that was the charity house, you know what I'm saying? I went down there, the brother Imam got a beautiful program, on my own. He actually hired me when I came home, gave me a job, beautiful program. And it's doing a lot, like we're doing a lot in the community, helping a lot of people. And that was always my thing. Like, okay, because looking at the conditions of my people, it's like, I'm in there and I'm heartbroken, but I'm I'm powerless. So to be in a position where it's like, okay, I'm working and I'm out here helping my community. And they afforded me that opportunity, and for that, I'm grateful as well. To be dealing with people, genuine, sincere people that are actually out there, making change in the community. So being out there, like it was freezing cold outside, but I didn't feel any of it. Like it felt so good. And every person we're passing out bags and like with hygiene in it, book bags with hygiene. It was traveling bags, nice bags, hygiene up in it, coats, and every person that walked up, it was like, hey, it was like my relatives. Like the crazy thing, it was like, we know each other. Like, what's up? Like, these are my people. They're like, hey, brother, what is it? I'm like, yeah, what's up? Like, but they didn't know, like none of them probably could even imagine, like just a month ago, 2 months ago, like I was just in a cell, like with life in prison for something I didn't have anything to do with. But it's like, now I'm out here and I'm helping you. I mean, the creator is helping you because it's not me. I'm being a vessel. I'm being that vehicle to go out there and spread that help. But like, yeah, so everything that, it's been a beautiful experience. And like I said, like it's been like a dream come true, being able to be with my family, being able to go to sleep at home, not have to watch them walk out the door, after a visit. Like, we together, we locked in. So it's been a beautiful experience.
I have just one more question for Matt and Caitlin and one final question for you. And then I've got some questions from the audience I want to ask. And this is for Matt and Caitlin. What message do you have for other law students or young lawyers who are thinking about what they want to do with their career, who are thinking about what it means to have a law degree, the power of access to justice? Justice is an overused word. For sure, but access to our legal system. What message do you want them to take away from everything we're talking about today? I'm going to start with Matt.
There's just so much work that remains. Obviously, this is a huge victory, but it's one of many victories that need to be had. There's so many.
This isn't done yet, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
And even this isn't done yet.
Right, of course. And there's just so many unfairly or wrongfully convicted or sentenced justice impact individuals. So I'd say, figure out what your needs, values, and priorities are. And if those compel you to go into the criminal justice field, then do so. If they don't, there's no shame in that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you do choose to go down that path, there will be pushback from family, from friends, from societal norms in general. So I would encourage you to stay true to your own values and priorities. And even if you don't want to be a lawyer per se, there's tons of other ways you can use your law degree to remain involved, whether it be research with a professor, nonprofit work, working on the legislative side of things, policy work, etc. And lastly, if you do go down this path, make sure you take care of yourself and your own mental health. You can't really help others unless you're taking care of yourself. I'm a huge advocate for therapy, but if you do go into this field, make sure you're doing something to provide yourself with that necessary self-care.
Caitlin?
Yeah, I think the work that Matt and I have done, the work that the clinic gives us the opportunity to do, has been very empowering. As young attorneys, you really have the opportunity to make a positive change in someone's life. And sometimes that often happens when someone's feeling at their most vulnerable. If this is something that you're interested in, I encourage you to get involved and explore it. And as Matt said, there's still a lot of work to be done, and there are so many different ways to be involved.
The final question for Maayan is, it's not that often that people who don't yet have their law license, who are law students, have the opportunity to work as closely as Matt and Caitlin did with you, and in a case that means so much, to you and so many other people. Can you just say a few words about your experience working with them? I guess Matt's a young lawyer now, but he's done this work since he was a law student.
That's right. Yeah. Both Matt and Caitlin. I mean, like I said, like we become family now. It's not so that place kind of it creates and it breeds hopelessness. And not just hopelessness in your situation, but the good of people. Like you automatically you become a pessimist. Like when you deal with people, you expect the worst of them. So when you get people to give you the very best, it's like newfound hope, and it's like a breath of fresh air. And so both of them were so genuine and sincere when they were coming up here and they were dealing with me. It was like a piece of home. Like to be far away and then have a piece of home come up in there and being given to you, you know what I mean? And to me personally, like that was something that was priceless as well. And I think that even the work ethic, it came from their sincerity and their genuine desire to do what was right. And so many people get lost in the either friendship, whatever it is, like they get lost in the process of practicing law. They get lost and they forget the reason why they're practicing. And I think that like with them coming up there and having so much sincerity, even for me to be comfortable with dealing with, like, because even in there, like everybody got ulterior motives or got a trick up their sleeves, but like to deal with people that were just so genuine and so sincere, so trustworthy, you know what I mean? Like I know that that in itself made the process work, and we need more of them. You know what I mean? We need so much, like, because it's like I said, that place breeds hopelessness, and there's so many hopeless men that are in there because they don't have anybody that really cares, and they don't have anybody that they could really trust. And so those two things, like I said, like I can't thank them enough. And a friendship was created. Like it wasn't, and like I've lived with people for years and years and years and years, and we might be familiar with each other, but we weren't friends, so for them to come up for just that short period of time and for us to become friends and be locked in, like it shows the potency, how potent that was, and how important it was, and how much that was a need for me to have real people that really cared in my life. Because like I said, that was a hard time to know that all of this, to know that I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. And that you have somebody that comes up that actually believes in you. So
I just want to say thank you for the kind words, Maayan.
Thank you. Thank you for showing up and showing out. I'm happy to be here. Straight up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously we couldn't be happier to have you here. I'm going to ask you one last question from the audience that I think is a great question. There are a number of really good questions. What do you want to see? And this is a broad system question, but what would you like to see change in how we treat young people who are forced to interact with law enforcement and the justice system at such a young age? What are just one or two things we, all of us are cogs in the system, even me, as a defense attorney, have a lot of ways to improve. What are things that we could do differently collectively that would have made, say, looking back to your first contact with the justice system when you were 16, more bearable, more humane, better?
I personally believe that there has to be somebody, basically a liaison or somebody, a go-between. It has to be somebody there that actually understands what these kids are going through, that's there to help them and their families while they're going through it. Because a lot of times people's families they're just as naive as the kid is about what's going on. And so, to invoke certain rights, or for you to even to be comfortable and know, like, okay, it's going to be all right. Like, this isn't, because that's a very scary situation. You know what I mean? And if you're not afraid and you're a kid going through that, then that means that like you've already been basically conditioned prior, or you've probably been going through the system early or whatever. But like that's a very, very scary situation. And I think that we need more people, like somebody who's actually there to set in a place that's in a position of where they could go in there and they could facilitate certain things with the family and with the juvenile himself or herself, to protect them and to let them know like that it's gonna be all right. Because it really is like when you get in there, it just you feel like the whole world's against you, and the only people that you feel like care about you, they can't do anything to help because they don't know. Either they don't know or their voices are being silenced.
That I think that's incredibly insightful. I know we have to finish, and I know there are going to be people that are going to step off, but I just want to add one thing that I know is meaningful to you. And since I have the opportunity, I will. One of the things that we've been pushing for as a clinic and as a community, an advocacy community, is juvenile sentencing reform, so that people who go into prison as children have an opportunity and eligibility for release in an amount of time that will allow them a true, meaningful life on the outside. And we have a bill that is going to be heard tomorrow before the Minnesota House of Representatives Public Safety Committee that would give every person in the state of Minnesota who is sentenced for a crime that took place when they were under 18, eligibility for release after 15 years. Doesn't mean they get out, but it is a first look at 15 years. Could you say just a couple words about that before we end?
Well, I think that that's very important as a people, that we don't throw our children away. Even to have that set into play, like 15 years, and then you come in, and then somebody actually decides if you do go home, but 15 years where you have an opportunity for them to look and see, is there any rehabilitation? Has there been rehabilitation that's took place? Because there's so many good people that went in there as kids, and they're just in there. They're basically being housed, like they're just being warehoused. Like they've completed the rehabilitation has already took place. Like, you got scholars that, like, I'm talking about some of the brightest people I've ever met in my life, and they're just in there and they're basically just rotting away. And they can contribute so much to our community. You know what I'm saying? Like our community, the broad community, like it's so many people that are in there that are waiting to come home or just to have an opportunity to come out here and do something to help. Just how I had them same dreams and aspirations to come out here and help the homeless or like the people who are in need. Like there's so many other people that are in there that want to come out and help. And there's so many people that need help out here. So, I think that us as a society, we should at least give them the opportunity. And like I said, like Perry was saying, like, it's not saying that they're going home right now, but it's saying that case by case, you will look and evaluate to see, okay, are they ready? Has this already taken place? This is the Department of Corrections. Have they been corrected? If they've been corrected, then why are they still in there?
Thank you so much. We have reached time. Matt, Caitlin, and Maayan, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
It's an honor to work with all of you.
You as well.
Thank you.